I want to talk about your book, but to talk about the inspiration of this, you've been teaching and playing music for over 50 years, teaching people, helping people, motivating folks. You must have seen a need in the music community because you've written all kinds of other books, music education books, but this one is different where it's motivation and empowering. What inspired you to write this in the first place?
Hi, Dave, great question. It's kind of interesting. As a child, when I was younger, I had a tremendous stammering challenge.
Right.
It was really bad. I have two older brothers that are a year apart that were very popular in school. My younger sister is very, very talented. And I kind of, in the middle there, kind of got a little lost at what I did. And I had a stammering challenge. I didn't speak that well. I was not a great student in school. And I wore glasses. So at 8 years old, when you're wearing glasses, you get, at that time, in the 50s and early 60s, you were teased a lot. So by being teased, and I couldn't play a lot of sports because of my glasses. I played basketball once. I broke the glasses in the first quarter of playing. So it was just always a challenge to be involved with being actively involved. So I put my energy towards music. I was inspired to hear Ringo play on the Ed Sullivan Show in February of 1964, and that inspired me to want to play drums. So drumming became my outlet, and because of that drumming outlet, it gave me such a strength and such a level of confidence that I began to have more confidence in myself, and my stammering started going away. And I slowly began to focus on speaking slowly, more articulately and clearly, because when I practiced, I had to practice slow and articulate.
Right.
So I just took many of the practicing skills and applied them towards my life. So that was the first thing that I saw, that I had a confidence challenge, low self-esteem, and music started to really open me up. So now here I am, now forward many, many years. I'm traveling around the world, opening up clinic tours with Billy Cobham and Simon Phillips and Lenny White and all these great, great drummers. And I'm in front of crowds speaking and inspiring people and talking. And many of the people that I would meet in my global travels, and I've been traveling the globe for well over 35 years. And it's probably closer now to 40 years when I think about it, which is kind of crazy. And in the intensity of that traveling, I've met so many people that I sensed had the same challenges that I had with low self-esteem, lack of confidence. They doubted themselves that they could be good at what they did, whether it was a drummer. I can't be, whether he was even a musician, a bass player. Well, I'm not that good. I'm from a small town. Nothing ever happens in this small town. So whether it was where they lived or every excuse in the world came out for these people to be disempowered. And that's the word that kept on hitting me. These people were disempowered. They were not empowering themselves. So just in the course of time in my lessons, and I started teaching at the age of 17. So for now, 49 years I've been teaching. And you kind of learn on these one-on-one lessons through all these years that there's got to be a way that I can reach each of these students. I've got to kind of step into their world. I've got to get to know them and find out how they learn. And I've got to find out some of the challenges that they have as individuals. When I find out those challenges and how they learn, I then begin to realize that there are ways that I can give them tools to empower themselves.
Okay. What are some of those tools?
So, and that's where it started. So what it came down to was I started understanding that, I had to first make them understand what passion was. That they came to me, they had this passion to play music, this strong desire to want to be the best at what they can do, and to be the best of who they can be. It wasn't about being as good as anybody else. It was trying to be the best that they can be. So we had to keep on focusing on, don't compare yourself to other drummers. Listen, if I compared myself to Buddy Rich or Steve Gadd in the early days when I started, I would have been setting myself up for failure.
Right.
So I just allowed those players to inspire me, and I would try to steal from them what I can steal from them that I can adapt to my own playing. It might have been a way that they sat, their cymbal set up, the way they grooved, a fill that they played, an idea that they articulated, the form of how they played the song, all these different things. I would take a little bit out of it. And although I couldn't play it exactly like them, I kind of found my own way of how I can figure it out. Yeah. So I began to understand that passion was the first motivating force. There's got to be that constant desire to want to continue to get better. So that was the common denominator that I noticed with all of my students. And then I just kept on realizing that there were certain tools that you needed, and there were certain tools like discipline and perseverance and accountability and responsibility, just certain words that I felt had to be a fundamental area of us to learn. So I began to write these notes down, and then I realized you had to have like a vision and a plan and like you had to understand what your dream was. So all these words were words that I was just kind of putting into the field of teaching. What's your dream? What do you see your vision to be? What are some of your goals? How strong of a personality do you have that you can persevere by sticking with something? Do you even understand what perseverance is? Right. Which means to never give up. So I kept on throwing these words out and using these words, and I found out that the students were adapting to it and making change. They were growing and becoming more empowered. This was an incredible journey. So at that point, one night it's like 3:00 in the morning, and I always have pencil and paper next to my bed, and now I have my phone next to my bed. So 20 some odd years ago, it was pencil and paper. Now it's my phone. I wake up and thumb my way through notes. And in the middle of the night, I kind of woke up and I saw this vision of a graph in my head. And so I got up and I quickly drew out what it was. And it started with passion on the bottom. And then I wrote a couple words. Then I wrote an arrow that went up to the dream and the vision. Then I put some goals in there. And it was this kind of crude, drawn document that just really looked, like some kind of hieroglyphic, out of a pyramid somewhere, Yeah. We come out. I put it down on the paper, I finish it, I put it down, I go back to bed. I wake up the next morning, and I start looking at this, and I start to fine-tune what it is. I fine-tuned the arrows. I cleaned it up a little. There were certain words that I wrote. I rewrote the words so it was clearer. I added a couple more words. So I put this together, and I came up with this graph that kind of looked similar to this.
Yeah, I've got it up on the screen right now, Dom. We've got the graphic up. So
excellent. Thank you. So with that, it kind of looked like that. So at one point, it didn't have a title to it. So my wife, Charmaine, says, well, what? I said, look at this here. She goes, well, what is it? I said, well, it's kind of like when I teach, I kind of use this stuff, and it's kind of like a formula for me to use it with my teaching, like a graph that I could use that I can point to that will help me teach better. So she goes, well, what exactly is it? I said, well, when I look through it with the passion and the dream and vision and these words, I said, it's kind of like it's a chart of empowerment. Yeah. So she goes, empowerment. She goes, interesting. She goes, well, so you're empowering the student. I said, well, it's not, well, the chart, yes, I'm trying to empower them, but I'm trying to get them to empower themselves. So she goes, well, it's kind of like a cycle then. I said, yeah, it's a cycle. So she said, so it's basically a cycle of self-empowerment. And I went, I'm going to steal that from you.
That's good stuff. Right?
All right. And that's really kind of how it started. So I wrote down the cycle of self-empowerment, and then in time started fine-tuning more of the word. And if you look at the graph, you'll see some of the words, that when we start from your passion, your fuel, that's the flame. That's what's going to, that's what's going to bring everything. You got to keep on fueling that flame. So how do you put fire on the flame? How do you put, logs? How do you put gasoline? How do you keep fueling that flame? Well, to me, it was the more I played with bands, I got more excited. The more I listened to music, on my headphones, it inspired me. The more I went to hear live music, it kept on fueling that flame. So by performing, listening, and attending live concerts, that was my formula of me continuing to fuel my passion.
Love it.
So once I had the passion, then that led to the entire graph.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you sharing your story of overcoming that challenge. You told me this a couple of weeks ago, and I was blown away because Your voice is an amazing voice. You got a great radio and TV voice, and you read all of this stuff. You write the books, but you put them into voice. You're leading these panels, thesessions.org. People check them out. So to hear your story of a guy who I see is just like really powerful voice and presentation, that challenge that you had with the stuttering or the stammering, I think it's really powerful. These principles that you're talking about, you've been teaching others. Who taught you these principles?
It's a great question. A lot of this, and as many of my friends say, they say, Dom, you have a great face for radio. So I get that a lot.
Me too.
I get that a lot. But what it came down to was, I got to throw it back to my parents. I mean, they were teachers that didn't know they were teaching. They were philosophers that didn't know they were giving wisdom out in some of their senses. They were guidances of moral compasses that always made decisions based off of other people's feelings and surroundings that was best for everyone, selfless people as opposed to being selfish people. And that's just, my mom and dad were just like that. So you couldn't help but, that's where I kind of got a lot of this from. My dad was a World War II veteran and became a fireman. He was an active fireman for 65 years up until the day he passed away. Wow. And a volunteer fireman, so never getting paid, just volunteering in his local community, and to a point where they went and they dedicated a firehouse after him. There's a big bronze plaque for my dad, which is so beautiful. Wow. In Baldwin, Long Island, on Baldwin Avenue. If anyone goes to that area and goes to the host company number 3 firehouse, they'll see a huge plaque that is my dad. Wow. And it really is kind of amazing to see his effort as a firematic skilled person. But he was an auto mechanic, so not only did he have his own business with his brothers, but he also repaired fire trucks. So my father was actively involved in fixing these fire trucks. So he actually became a great chief. As a chief, he knew the fire trucks so well because he built them. Right.
That's amazing.
So he knew how to control, when a fire happened. He was very successful in what he did as a firematic, technician. And my mom was a singer and with her sisters, and they had gotten the first call back to a Broadway show. So there was always music in our household. And when my grandfather, an old school Italian that came over from Italy back in the early 1900s, when he heard that these 3 girls were going to go that he didn't know they did the audition. So when they had gotten the call back, he forbid for them to go. Oh. And then they didn't go. And I'm sure they would have got the role because they sang great harmonies, and it was just the way it was back at that time. So, my mom is still having music around the household and having a loving Italian family that every Sunday all the relatives came over to our house, and there was a party every Sunday where we played with our cousins. We brought out our instruments. We played. So it was that was all going on. You couldn't help but understand words like integrity, words like dedication, words like honesty, trust. And those were all the words that I put on my cycle of self-empowerment. Those were words that I witnessed and words that became the example of living a productive and healthy life.